So I just want to start by thanking the Moffson family for sponsoring this wonderful, wonderful afternoon. I actually had the privilege, excuse me, of meeting Daniella and her sister, I believe Raquel, many, many years ago in the city. And they came to a Torah class in, I believe it was in the Brownstone in Lower Manhattan. And both of them made a very, very deep impression. I don't remember people, but I distinctly remember both of them, and their beauty just shined from the inside and really illuminated a room. And everything that we're learning today should be Le'ilui Nishmata. So I think we call this class Healing Hearts, but it probably should have been called Broken Hearts. There's a famous teaching from the Kotzker Rebbe that says there's nothing as whole as a broken heart. And it sounds a little paradoxical and counterintuitive because brokenheartedness not something that we think of as being shalem, being whole. But our tzaddikim actually interpret the statement a little differently. Because when a person falls apart, and we all have times in our life when we feel like we're falling apart in our own unique ways, so we start to realize that, oh, I'm not as whole as I thought I was. I don't have it together the way I thought I thought of myself previously. And once I acknowledge that I'm not whole, then I can start to pick up the pieces again and understand myself and the situation I find myself in a much deeper way. So if there's nothing as whole as a broken heart, then there's really nothing as broken as a whole heart. And that kind of gives us permission to maybe create the space that we need to be when we find ourselves in a difficult situation. So social media might try to convince us otherwise, but perfection and a stress-free life is something that's always out of reach. It's always elusive. I'm striving for something that I can never really find and hold on to. And I'm a little bit of a type A personality. I like things to be in their place. I like my relationships to be in their place. You know, spouse, kids, friends, community, health, whatever it is, we like things to be very organized and put together. And I think at least for myself, I can only speak for myself, I'm always trying to get to that place where everything's in order and I can just sit down with my tea and relax for a few minutes. But it seems to be like an uphill battle and a losing battle. And maybe that's actually inherent to our existence, which began with Adam and Chava in Gan Eden. So I don't know, when I tend to think about Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, I tend to think of a perfect existence, right? You're in the Garden of Eden. Isn't that what, like, we're all, that was the picture of perfection. But actually, they were not in a state of perfection. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed Adam and Chava in Gan Eden, they were given an instruction, le'ovda u'leshomra, to work it, to make it come to fruition, and to safeguard it, to watch it, to cultivate it, and to guard it. And clearly, if it wasn't just Adam and Chava sitting down with their cup of tea at the table, they had work to do. So there was something that was lacking. It wasn't perfect just yet. And when a person can keep sight of the perfection that we're longing for and hold it, and at the same time recognize that, oh, I'm in a place right now that's not perfect just yet, that space between the place that I'm in, the place of imperfection, and the place that I'm longing to be of perfection is where actual growth happens. So there's a bracha that we say every morning in Birkot HaShachar, Sha'asali kol tzorki. You'll remember this. And we didn't say it today because it actually has meaning that's related to our shoes, the shoes that we wear. But the simple translation is that Hashem made for me all of my needs. She'asa, he made for me, li, kol tzorki, all my needs. So there's two ways that we could look at this. On the one hand, we could say Hashem takes care of all my needs. I have everything that I need. Whatever I think that I'm missing and I'm praying for and I'm longing for, actually, really, Hashem took care of all of my needs. I'm not missing anything. I have everything that I need. But we could also look at this phrase in the opposite way. Hashem made me my needs. All the things that I'm missing, all the things that I'm longing for, all the things that I want, he created me with all of those needs. They coexist in exactly the same space. The things that I'm lacking are exactly the things that I need. They're part of the things that I need. And that wholeness, the brokenness, is actually the wholeness, meaning the things that I'm lacking, the things that I'm missing, actually create this whole picture of who I am. So I've kind of been a little obsessed with listening to stories from Eretz Yisrael. Stories of strength and resilience and loss and sorrow and pain and unbelievable strength that have come out of this war since October 7th. And there's many powerful moving stories which I think illustrate exactly this point. The wholeness and the perfection that comes out of such a broken place that we find ourselves in right now. So this is already an older story. Maybe you're familiar with these, maybe you're not familiar. I'm happy to share if you're not, and it's always good to hear again if you are. Emily Hand, who was in captivity for 55 days, a young girl. I remember, if you remember, there was a picture of her father with his hands on his face, I believe, when he heard that his daughter was, I believe, in captivity. I think at that point he had thought he knew she was in captivity. And in an interview, her sister Natalie, shared a little bit of what Emily went through in Hamas captivity and how she had changed. So she said, when she shared this interview, it was really striking. And her sister Natalie said that before every meal, now that when her family would sit down together, before Emily would eat anything, she would look around at everybody at the table and ask them if they're hungry, which was like kind of a funny thing to do, like the family sitting down together to eat dinner. You would think, okay, yeah, we're all hungry enough to eat dinner. But she would ask everybody if they're hungry and offer each person who said that they were hungry some of her food. Now, Emily explained, it became apparent, that she learned to do this when she was in captivity. When she and the hostages were eating together, all the adults would offer the children some of their food. And this was a learned behavior that Emily became accustomed to. And to see the thoughtfulness and the beauty within that horror was extremely meaningful and striking to me. Because to see the perfection, the compassion, the seeing the other person as a result of being in such a horrific place, that's wholeness that comes from brokenness. So when we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, it's very interesting that we say Hashem's name 3 times in a row. Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem, 3 times, Echad. So of course we know when we see the name, when we use the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, so that represents Hashem's Rachamim, right? His Chesed, His mercy. And when we have the name Elokim, Elokenu, so that refers to Hashem's Din, judgment, difficulty. And then we have Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei, again, Chesed. So when we say this 3 in a row, Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem, we're really saying that everything that we're experiencing, all the chesed, all the din, all the pain, all the suffering, all the good, it's really all one. It's really all coming from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's coming from a place of chesed. It's all, at the end, it's all chesed. What hurts and what feels good, what's harsh and what seems gentle, it's all really unified in the end. But if it's all oneness, and if it's all really chesed, then why are we introduced to Hashem in the Torah in the beginning, first pasuk, as Elokim, right? Bereshit bara Elokim. Why are we introduced with his name, the name in plurality, the name of disparateness, of separateness? So if the mantra of the Jewish people is all about achdut, it's all about unity, it should have been Bereshit bara Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Let's see Hashem's chesed. That's the goal. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're waiting for Mashiach for. We want there to be oneness. We want there to be revealed good. So perhaps this is because the brokenness is inherent to our mission here in this world. The wholeness has to come through the brokenness and the disparateness, even in Hashem's names. And maybe we're introduced to Hashem as Elokim to set us up for the work that's expected of us. That the path to wholeness can only be achieved through the broken. I saw just last night on one of the videos that were put out for Tish'a BeAb, Aish put out a video, and there was an interview with Bar Cooperstein's mother, Julia. Bar Cooperstein, I think he's 21 or 22. He's being held hostage in Gaza. And his mother, who looks like really otherworldly, in her beautiful mitpachat, and you can see there's so much emotion when she's speaking, and she's in so much pain, and she is a woman of tremendous, tremendous emunah. And she gave a little bit of background about who her son is. Her husband was in a car accident 4.5 years ago, and he's in a wheelchair. And she said that her son, Bar, the past 4.5 years, has been working really for the past 4 years trying to generate extra income for the family that they need. And when he went to the Nova Festival, he was actually going to work. He wasn't going there as a participant. He was there to make some money to help his family. And he made sure to tell his mother, don't worry, they got us an apartment or some sort of sleeping arrangement on site, so I won't have to be driving on Shabbat or Simchat Torah. And she, of course, heard reports afterwards about what happened. And she described how heroic her son was. And he found people and he drove them to safety. He made 4 trips driving people, getting them out of the terrorists' hands. And he helped injured people. He was trained as a combat medic. And he did unbelievable things to help countless, countless people. And the interviewer asks Julie, she says, how does that make you feel when you hear about your son and everything that he did? So she said, of course, I'm so happy that his friend survived, that he's alive and well, and he's able to share whatever he shared with me. But she said, I have no complaints against the Borei Olam. No complaints whatsoever, and no doubts about how he runs this world. I have absolutely no questions. And she said, and this is the powerful kicker, Bar is not in the hands of Hamas. He's in the hands of the Borei Olam. I have no doubt about it. That was her quote. That's perfection that can only be born through brokenness and imperfection. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch, in an essay around Chanukah time, he explains that in order to become one, in order to achieve achdut, we need to have darkness. Because in the darkness, you have to kind of enmesh yourself into your environment around you. You lose your sense of self in the dark. So on a superficial plane, of course, right, there's this blanket of darkness. You can't even see where you're walking. You bump into everything. Everything's kind of enmeshed together. But on a person-to-person plane, from human to human, right, we start to feel the pain of our brothers and sisters. We feel empathy and compassion towards people who are going through difficult times, who are suffering. And the Jewish people have this uncanny ability to let go of all of the differences when we're going through difficult times. So sometimes when we feel like things are falling apart, they actually really may be falling into place. A couple weeks ago, I went to hear Sapir Cohen speak in person. She was also released from captivity after 55 days. And she has an unbelievable story. Have most of you heard her story? Sapir Cohen? Okay. I'll send you a link. Message me and I'll send you a link. You have to hear it from her. But in a nutshell, I don't know, some months before October 7th, she started to feel that she wasn't well. She went to a bunch of doctors, and they were, she did all these tests. Everyone told her everything's fine. If anything, one doctor told her there's something wrong with you, it's in your head. You're fine. And about a month before October 7th, she stumbles across on Instagram a parak of Tehillim. She's not a religious woman, a believer. She says, I always believed in God, but I never practiced anything. I never prayed. She came across a parak of Tehillim, parak Chav Zayin, and with a line that said, if you say this parak of Tehillim for 30 days, you will be protected. So she figured, you know what, I'm just going to say, it can't hurt, I'm going to say this parak of Tehillim. And she says it every single day. And it's like very strange because it doesn't talk about sickness, and it even talks about Hamas and war. She's saying this parak of Tehillim, and she said, I never remembered anything in high school. I never memorized anything, but somehow I was able to memorize this parak of Tehillim. And they ended up in, I forgot if it's Nachal Oz or somewhere in the south, visiting her boyfriend's parents for Simchat Torah. And it's a whole story how she was hiding underneath the bed, and she was, just put a blanket over herself, and she was just saying this parak over and over again. It's the only thing she could do, just to say this parak Chav Zayin. Hamas came, they took her boyfriend, they separated them, she was taken captive, and she found herself with a 16-year-old girl. And all of a sudden, when she was with this young girl, she realized that she had this, first of all, she said, I felt like had this unique power and energy that Hashem somehow gave me this extra koach to be here and be here for the 16-year-old girl. I was going to take care of her. And she would try to make jokes and make fun out of their situation in whatever ways she could. And she was on a mission. She said, every single day I said my parak of Tehillim, and I thanked God for bringing me to this place. I thanked Hashem for bringing me to Gaza because I felt that He gave me a certain koach to keep myself and this young girl who she was with, to keep us going. So at some point, the terrorist that was watching them, she said they spent a month in a home, and then a month in the tunnels. It was very funny. She said, when the 16-year-old girl found out that they were going into the tunnels, she was hysterical, crying and falling apart. And of course, Sapir in her very positive, upbeat attitude is like, what do you mean? We're in Gaza. We have to go to the main attraction. We have to see the tunnels. So they go. She said at one point, the terrorist calls her over to her and says, come here, I want you to see something. And he takes out a yahrzeit candle and writes her name on it. And of course now I'm thinking oh my gosh, she's going to try and kill her right now, right? But he writes her name on it, and he lights this candle. And she says, what are you doing? Why are you writing my name? And he says, you're my enemy, and I hate you. But when you're in this place, you bring so much light. From the terrorists. This perfection can only be born from a place of imperfection. this wholeness from brokenness. We're in galut, obviously, which means exile. But it's interesting that the word galut and the word geula share the same shoresh, they share the same root, to reveal. Because both states, our galut and our geula, are meant to reveal Hashem's presence in this world. They're so intertwined. We can't have one without the other. We'll never get to geula without the galut. We can't possibly separate them. So to realize, to have the awareness and the appreciation that whenever we find ourselves, whether individually or collectively, in the challenges and the difficulties that we face, that our brokenness is going to eventually bring us to our wholeness. It's only through the brokenness that we can get to the wholeness. And if so fast and so terrible can happen so quickly like it did on October 7th, then be'ezrat Hashem, so can the geula. May we be zochet to experience it.